We're continuing our series of telling their stories, their Guam World War II survival stories. Again, thank you again for coming, Irene.
Well, thank you.
Your story, of course, like a lot of folks that I read about or I hear about their stories, you guys were constantly hungry. You're always hungry.
It is because, you know, my father was in the military and we buy our groceries in the commissary. So we just had a small supply. And during right after when the Japanese bombed, we didn't have an amount of food. We didn't carry any at all. And my grandfather doesn't have a ranch. He doesn't have a farm.
So yeah, so you guys weren't farming.
No, we're city people.
Sure, yeah.
So, you know, Senator, it is so hard for my mother to put any food on the table because really we were starving. We didn't even know whether we were going to have food the next day. And all we have been eating is not sweet potatoes and tortillas, because one good thing about it is that Uncle Frank Paris has a big farm, and he told my grandfather, very good, and we're related, he said, let's go up to our farm, and if you want corn and sweet potatoes, you can have it. So my brother and my sister and my other brother would go up to Frank Paris's farm and get some corn and sweet potatoes, and that's what kept us. And then sometimes he'll give us eggs. And I remember one time he gave us a pig.
Gave a pig.
So when my mother would cook this chicken, she will boil it and boil it over and over again. And you know, I will give the soup part to my grandfather, grandmother, and my baby sister was only 8 months old.
So they were the priority, right? The baby and your
yes.
grandparents. Yeah.
And then every month we were rationed with Japanese. This is a Japanese family in Guam that is in charge of rice. And once a month they would ration 1 gallon, you know, the gallon can of rice. And the sad part of it, Senator, is that when we lined up to get our ration, one of their children would take the rice in his hand and would throw it to us and said there were chickens.
Your chickens.
And
wow.
you know what, in Gomeña, something like that. So he calls us that. And up to this day, we will never forget that day, how we were treated regarding the rice.
the rice. Now tell us this march to Manyangan.
Okay. Well, when the Americans were bombing, we went back to Agana because the house wasn't destroyed by the Japanese, my father's home. So when the Americans came and they started to bomb Agana, especially the city, my mother said, let's leave the house because it's dangerous. But my grandfather's a stubborn old man that he wouldn't leave. So he stayed behind with my cousin David Paris, and they went into a bunker, a Japanese bunker, while my mother and the rest of the family ran, and we hid under the Agana Bridge. And somehow I found an iron, and I put it on my head, and I said, nobody's going to shoot me. And my sister found a plate and put it in her head. We didn't know about war, see.
It worked.
It worked. So then after the planes left, maybe to refill them, so we went out to the street to walk up to San Ramon Hill. Here comes 2 men in black. And my mother said, oh, the black man has invaded the island. We thought it was black people, you know, men in the surf. It was my grandfather and my cousin. My grandfather's eye was hanging down.
Oh, okay. He was shot or a shrapnel? Or,
yes, because the American planes and Japanese plane were shooting down the bunker, and they were buried alive.
Wow.
And my cousin saw a little hole, and he dug himself out. Then he went back and dug my grandfather out. So when my grandfather came out, when the 2 of them, all torn up, we held their hands, and then we started to walk. The hospital, Susana Hut, was burning bad. And we were walking, and pretty soon there comes a Japanese corpsman. We thought he was going to kill us. But he was so kind that he went back to the hospital, he got bandages, and he went out, and he helped my grandfather with his eye because his socket fell out. And he told us to go run. So when we started to go up San Ramon Hill, there was trucks of Japanese soldiers going up the San Ramon Hill, but they didn't bother us because they were
They were fleeing basically
yes,
as well.
and probably nervous too.
Sure, sure.
So we found a house in Sinahanya next to the friary. I think it belongs to the Salas family, the Aaron family.
Yeah, yeah.
And we stayed there for 2 nights. And then here comes a Japanese soldier and told us to get out and go out to the street, to the road, and join these other people, they're Comenians, that are walking. So we did. And then a little ways, this family saw us and came over and said, I see that you really need help. And we didn't have no food at all. So then he introduced himself and he says, I am Tomas and Susepan Oka. So he said, don't worry, we'll take care of you. So he did. He took my grandfather and put him on his carabao, and the rest of us followed. So we walked from Sinahanya to Menengun, which we didn't know where we were going, but there was Japanese soldiers all around. We walked for 2 days. Then we came up to a place, and we found out that that was the concentration camp in Jonia. So we were still with the Oka family. So when we were there, we crossed the river, and then Mr. Oka built us a shack. And not only for us, but for his entire family. I think there's close to 60.
Wow.
And from there, he rationed the food that he had. He had a lot of food with him. And he just rationed everyone, like the katupat, you know.
Sure, yes.
And that what saved us. That's why we don't know how to say this, but they really saved our lives. And then in Menengun, we didn't have any water, but there was a river. And everybody was using the river, washing, taking
bathing, drinking.
And my father's eye, the blood was coming out. We had to wash the gauze. And we even drank from the same river. And it so happens no one got sick. Not like nowadays, right? So
some things have changed.
Something have changed. And then so far, rumors come. We heard rumors that the Japanese going to start killing the people in the camp. So we were scared. We were very, very scared. So then, hours, I think, or a day or a half, we saw, somebody told us that the Americans is coming, the Americans are coming. So here comes, gosh, so many army men. And they start hollering, follow us, follow us. My mother went over and started kissing the men. Oh, you know. So we all went. It was raining hard, but we still kept on going. And the military told us to follow them up to a mountain. And then we knew that was Mount Tengo. And when we came to Mount Tengo, we were separated. We didn't know where my mother is. Only my brother and myself and my sister. We were separated in the line. So it was raining one night, that same night. The military, you know, they dug their own foxhole, and they put us there and covered us with their ponchos. And then when daylight came, we got out and started continuing our walk. That's when we found my mom on the other side. And then we had to stay again at Mount Tengo. And so happened, we're very lucky that another family saw us and he said, come with us and come in our shelter. And that family is the Rios family.
Okay.
Yeah, the Rios.
Now, with that, and take consideration as well that your dad was now in Japan, he was incarcerated there as a prisoner of war.
Yes.
So fast forward, the Guam was liberated, of course. We're going to be celebrating that in a couple weeks here. Guam was liberated. Your dad was a POW in Japan. Now, you were able to see your dad afterwards.
After, for 3.5 years.
How long after the liberation you say that you were able to see your dad then?
Well, right after they declared that the war has ended, and then my father was in Japan. They were put in a box train and by the military, and then each they had to go to a certain station, or how many are going to Guam, how many are going to the States. so happened that my father was sent to Guam. And when the military brought him up to the house, we thought we were seeing a ghost. He looked terrible. He was just skin and bones. And my mother said, "Oh, come and kiss your dad." We
You didn't
ran
know who
away.
he was?
No,
You
we ran away.
You ran away. It was so scary.
It was just that.
I got to take a break, but thank you very much
Oh.
for being here. We're going to have a few minutes when we come back.